St. John of the Cross. Some basic information you need to know about him is that his feast day is on December 14th. He was born and lived in Spain, and he is now the patron of contemplative, mystics, and Spanish poets. He lived from 1542 to 1591 and was canonized on December 27th of 1726 by Pope Benedict. Who was St. John? As a young boy, he went to boarding school for the poor, and it was there where he was given a religious education. When he was young, he served as an acolyte at an Augustinian monastery, and when he got older, he worked in a hospital. During his time working in the hospital, he also attended Jesuit school. In 1563, he joined the Carmelite order and took the name John of St. Matthias. He made vows in 1564 and went to study theology and philosophy. During his time studying, he dared to translate the book of Song of Songs into Spanish, which at the time was against the Catholic Church. He became a priest in 1567. And during his time becoming a priest and trying to choose a monastery to go to, he encountered St. Teresa of Avila and followed her. He liked the way that she kept order in her devotion to prayer and simplicity. On November 28th of 1568, he changed his name to John of the Cross. In 1572, John traveled to Avila and became Teresa's confessor and spiritual guide like she asked. During his time there, he had a vision of Christ and made a drawing that is now called Christ from Above. While in the Carmelite monastery, people in the Carmelite order wanted reform. So the Carmelite order was split into two different groups. In 1577, John was ordered to leave this monastery and return to his original home. But John's work to reform order had already been approved, so he had stayed. Here is a picture of the vision that St. John had, called Christ from Above, that he had drawn out. His life in prison. On December 2nd of 1577, a group of Carmelites broke into John's home and kidnapped him. They brought him before court for disobedience, and he was put in prison. There, he was forced to live in a small cell that he could barely lie down in. He was only given bread and water, and he was given public lashings every week. His only luxuries were a prayer book and an oil lamp. During his time in prison, he wrote poems on paper that was smuggled to him, and after 9 months, John found a way to sneak out. After he left, he spent 6 weeks in the hospital to recover. Some of St. John's most famous prayers are Stillness of Soul, Light and Love, and the Good Thief Prayer. So what can we learn from St. John? Even though St. John followed God and was voted to him, his life was not easy. While modern-day Christians might not be persecuted as harshly as St. John, we can always look to him as a leader and a light in our lives. Even in prison, he kept his eyes and his heart focused on God. He devoted himself to prayer and wrote poems to help those outside of the prison walls, as well as himself or others he might have come in contact with during his time in prison. As Christians, we should always be devoted to God, and even in the struggles of life, and we should always depend on trust in him, just like St. John.